In this video, we're going to talk about the Fluval CO2 20 system. Does it work? How does it work? What's in the box and how to set it up? Check it out. Welcome to another video. This channel is all about aquarium hobby, so if you're into the aquarium hobby and you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and that bell notification. So we're going to talk about a cheap way to put CO2 into your smaller tanks. I'm talking about the Fluval CO2 20 kit. Now this thing works great for aquariums 20 gallons or smaller. But the kicker is this, it's not your typical CO2 system. Now from looking on the internet, from answering your questions, from talking to you guys when you guys see this thing in my tanks, and from when I first bought it too, it's obvious there's a misunderstanding of how this system works. Hey, when I first bought this system, I was like, whoa, this is pretty cheap for a CO2 system. Let's get in and hook it up. Now I had my own fair share experience of using CO2 systems. And that was way back in. When I got back in this hobby, I was like, well, let's look at the new tech out there. Let's see what's out there nowadays. And that's when I saw this. So when I got at home, I unpacked it, I threw away all the boxes and instructions, and I hooked it up and bought extra parts because I didn't like the way you're supposed to do it. So I did the way that most people think you should do it, which mainly is hook up a bubble counter to it, put it on diffuser, put it in your tank, turn up the knob just a little, and hit those bubbles per second, 1 second at a time. I figured, hey, this should work. Nope. The problem is if you set up this way, you're not going to get much CO2 out of it. When I did it, I didn't get more than 2 days worth of CO2 of running the system this way. So how does it actually work? The concept is simple. You fill up that CO2 diffuser chamber with the CO2 from the canister, the little canister, and you let it be. What happens is the CO2 diffuses or dissolves into the water and provides your plants with CO2. This is what we call a passive CO2 system. It doesn't push CO2 hard into the aquarium and then drive your plants to grow really, really fast. Most of the time, that's why we use CO2, to push the limits of your plants. This really is just to give your plants a little oomph. It's probably more accurate to say that it's a CO2 system that supplements your plants with CO2. Supplementing meaning giving your plants a little more CO2 than there is usually in your tanks. So you got it? But does it work? Well, you be the judge of that. If you've been following my channel and you watch my, say, beginner to series, The Planet Tank Guide, which I hope you watched because I spent a lot of time on that thing and I think I gave out the right information. I think people are actually learning from that. Then you probably noticed that 10-gallon tank that was behind me while I was talking. Do you realize how green and lush and full the tank was with all the plants in it? I was using your standard CO2 system in that tank, but I was using the system in that tank. I installed the system in that tank 3 weeks before I did that video. But if you have been following me lately, you know that I replanted my 20-gallon long, made into a low-tech Planet tank, and I started using the system on it. Worked great, but again, it's a supplement. It didn't push my plants to grow. How well does it work? Well, in the 10-gallon tank, it works very well. Anything 10-gallon or smaller. In that 20-gallon tank that I was talking about, took a little more work. Here's why. The way the system works is that you pump the CO2 into that chamber and let that CO2 just dissolve into the water, right? The chamber itself comes in 2 parts. In a 10-gallon tank, you're going to use both of those chambers and fill it up every day. It will last about 6 hours, so give the plants plenty of CO2. In something, say a 5-gallon tank, you would just use one of those chambers. And again, it will probably last you for the whole day in that 5-gallon tank. Again, it also depends on how much plant load you have in your tank. But if you notice on my 10-gallon tank, that was a heavy plant load, and filling up both chambers lasted pretty much the whole day. Now when it came to the 20-gallon tank, I found that I had to fill it up in the morning and fill it up again when I came home from work in the evenings. So let's take a look at what's in the box. Is really simple components. First, as here, we have an instruction manual. Take that instruction manual and throw it away because honestly, who reads instruction manuals? Especially us aquarists. Who needs a stinking manual, right? Next, we have a CO2 canister, which is little, tiny, and cute, and it has its own little holder. Just keep in mind that this holder is made for a rimless tank. So if you have a tank with a rim on it, you're going to have to do some finagling to actually hook that up on the side. Next, it comes with what they call a regulator. It really isn't a regulator, it's more like a needle valve. It does control the flow, but it has no gauges or anything. And if you want to adjust it to pump a certain amount of bubbles per second into a bubble counter, it doesn't work all that well. Remember, all it's for is so you can open up the contraption and pump CO2 into those chambers and then turn it off when you're done. It comes with a CO2 diffusion chamber. This thing comes in 2 pieces so that you can take it apart for smaller aquariums. Finally, it comes with a short piece of CO2 tubing. And that's all that is in the package itself. So let's talk about the pros of this product. It works great to supplement your plants with CO2. It's a decently priced CO2 system. The whole system itself costs around $28 if you look at it on Amazon. Sometimes there's a sale so you get it cheaper. I got mine for about $22. Now Fluval sells these refill canisters. I'm sorry Fluval, but that's a little expensive. That's the con, but here is the pro. Buy these in bulk. For example, I bought a pack of 6, but if you buy it in bulk, like I've seen it for like 32 in a box, so it's cheaper to buy non-Fluval brands. You can go on Amazon and buy these. These are actually used for paintball pistols or pumping bicycle tires. Just make sure you get the threaded ones because there are non-threaded ones. Now the cons, it's not your standard typical CO2 system. So don't expect to push it through a diffuser. I tried, it didn't work. But then, like I said, a great system to supplement your plants with CO2 and perfect for the smaller tanks. Now the second con is the CO2 chamber. It's quite large and it does look a little unsightly in a 10-gallon tank. In a 20-gallon tank, it's a little more hidden, but you can still see it's still there. So big diffusion chamber. And the final con, this actually goes back to the size of the chamber. The way the passive CO2 systems work is that you want a lot of surface area for the CO2 to dissolve into the water. Unfortunately, this chamber is actually very narrow, so you don't get the full effects of a passive CO2 system. Here's some tips if you plan on buying the system. This is something I haven't tried yet, but hook up a solenoid to it. So take this system, sorry for the dirty chamber, but I've been using this thing. Put the solenoid in between here, and then put it on a timer. Now it's going to take some finagling, but what you want to do is time it so that it releases enough CO2 to fill the chamber and shut off. Now again, on the 10-gallon tank or small, you just do it in the morning or whatever you want to set the time to. And on a 20-gallon, set it to do it twice a day. That's tip number 1. Maybe one you guys should try it and leave a comment down below and let me know how it works. Second tip is to put the chamber next to your filter outflow. If it's a canister filter, just put it underneath the outflow pipe. If you have a hang on the back filter, just put it underneath where the water falls out of the filter. And the final tip, as I mentioned before, buy the refill canisters in bulk. And it's really cool too, because when you clang them together, they make really cool noises. Have you tried this system? Leave a comment down below and let me know what your experiences were. And for more tips and reviews and aquarium discussions, and you're new here, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell icon. And remember, hit the like button or dislike button if you like or dislike this video, and also share this video if you think it'll help anyone else. I love you guys and have fun with your aquariums. I'll see you in the next video.